You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Inside the record-breaking grocery nightmare Trump tried to hide from you, based on an article by Matthew Russ. Starving the referee, then feigning surprise. The Outbreak Is the Evidence. A cyclospora outbreak linked to iceberg lettuce and at least 11,000 cases of explosive diarrhea is not just a food safety story. It is a governance story. The reporting shows an FDA and CDC stripped down by political decision, then asked to cope with a contamination crisis they have been made less able to see, trace, or prevent. That is the real scandal, not the virus-like language of controversy, and not the usual bureaucratic fog. The agency's weakness is the point of the policy. Power sat at the top. Donald Trump holds the actual institutional power here along with the officials carrying out his agenda. The source is plain about the decisions that matter. Roughly 20% of FDA staff cut, roughly 25% of CDC staff cut, the Food Safety Advisory Committee disbanded, the Mexico-facing safety team let go, and FoodNet narrowed so that cyclospora is no longer tracked. That is not drift. That is deliberate degradation. When a president's management produces fewer scientists, fewer warning systems, and fewer cross-border safety channels, the outcome is not neutral administration. It is a government choosing blindness. Redundant surveillance is the usual lie. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s claim that the FoodNet cuts were justified because they were redundant surveillance is a familiar trick. Shrink the state, then rename the damage as efficiency. It is not a serious explanation. It is a rhetorical laundering of responsibility. Susan Maine's rebuttal cuts through the pretense. The cuts happened. The committee was disbanded. The team was let go. The surveillance system was reduced. The administration can call that whatever it wants. The facts describe subtraction, not reform. The cost is predictable, not accidental. The source makes the consequence brutally clear. If cyclospora strikes again in 2027, the FDA still will not be able to trace it without intervention from the executive branch or Congress. That is what institutional sabotage looks like in public health. Not one dramatic collapse, but a chain of small incapacitations that leave the country slower to detect harm and weaker at responding to it. The worst part is how ordinary this has been made to sound. 11,000 cases should not be treated as an unfortunate episode in a system that still basically works. It is the product of a system that has been systematically made less functional. The real framing problem. The article's framing is too polite for the scale of what it describes. Controversy understates the decision-making. Cuts understates the consequence. This is not a mystery about why the federal government is struggling to protect the food supply. The people in charge reduce the capacity to do that job. When public institutions are hollowed out, the harm is not only that outbreaks spread, it is that responsibility becomes harder to pin down in time for anyone to be held accountable. That is the political logic here. Weaken the watchdogs, then talk about uncertainty. The pattern is deeper than FDA. This is the broader Republican method in its most naked form. Govern by attrition, break the machinery that detects and prevents damage, then insist the resulting failures prove the machinery was unnecessary. It is a politics of induced incompetence dressed up as cleanup. Democracy cannot function on agencies that are expected to protect the public after being stripped of the staff, expertise, and coordination needed to do so. What this story reveals is not just a dangerous outbreak, but a governing class willing to make the state fail and then blame the failure on the state itself. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to AlterNet for today's article with the automated voice of Ryan. Thanks for listening.